Shalom, beloveds of the King. I trust that you are all blessed and that Abba's been doing mighty and great things in this time as we've been preparing in these last few days, in these last 10 days as we've been preparing for Shavuot, and where Shavuot is right upon us. And Abba has just asked me to be able to release this message as I've been asking him, Father, is there anything that you're wanting me to do? And I know the things that he's asked me to do, and those are the things that I'll be doing, but I wasn't sure if I was to send out a message. But yesterday morning, I really woke up to a very stern message from the Father. And he reminded me that when I sent out the message of the tests in the wilderness, are you ready for what is coming? That was the one part, and the other part that I was supposed to send out was the one that was to do with the Lazarus Generation. It was about a people that are going to come forth. That is going to be a Lazarus people that are going to come forth. And who is these people that are going to have to raise up now, that are going to come forth in this time of Shavuot? And I had completely forgotten about sending out that teaching. And I was wanting to redo the teaching, but, it's just not going to be necessary for me to redo the whole teaching, because I did it last year at the conference in February, the conference called A Call to the Wilderness. And interesting how we are now just entered in our Torah portion readings in the book of Numbers, where we are being called to the wilderness, where we are going to have many trials and many tests. This is the wilderness time that we're in. And so in that conference, Father released this message. It was a very powerful message. And if you listen to it, you actually hear me speaking prophetically as if we are in this time, where I'm saying that the days are coming, and they're coming soon, when there's going to be many things ahead of us. And are we going to trust Yeshua? Are we going to be able to have faith and trust in him? Because when I open up this whole thing about Lazarus, and we look at Martha, and we look at Mary, and Mary representing a people group, Martha representing a people group, but then Lazarus being the new man that's going to come forth. And how interesting it is, because the name Lazarus actually means Yah is my help. And so if we really look at it, is that not what we're going to need in the time that we're going to come into now? Because Lazarus comes from the Hebrew name Elazar. We say it's Lazarus, but it's actually the Hebrew name Elazar. And Elazar means my Yah is help. So this Lazarus generation that's going to raise up is going to have to understand that truly Yah is going to have to be their help. And they are going to have to be a generation of people that are going to have to walk by faith. Not by sight, but by faith. And this Lazarus generation is so interesting because they didn't come from the time that Lazarus was resurrected. He was resurrected at a time of absolute impossibility. Because what's interesting is, you see, Yeshua resurrected on the third day. But the reason why Mary and Martha, specifically Mary, was having a problem with the resurrection of Lazarus is because she couldn't believe, because on the fourth day he's already decomposing. So that which looks like an impossibility, that which looks like it's totally not even going to be done, Yeshua resurrects a Lazarus at a time of when he was already decomposing. But it's to show us nothing is impossible to Yahuwah. And that is the company of people that are going to have to resurrect in this time, that are going to have to come forth in this time, because they are going to have to be a people that is going to birth in a very dark time. We're going to have to birth with the fullness of His glory, because we are going into the darkest hour. And you see, His glory is really manifested in a dark time. And so it's interesting, because you see, that is why I'm not going to redo the teaching, and I'm going to post the teaching. So I'm giving you this message first, and then you can listen to the teaching. It was extremely powerful. And at the end of the teaching, I give you scriptures of this new man, who is this new creation. Isaiah 43, from verses 19, it says, "Behold, I do a new thing. Can you not see it? Can you not perceive? I will make a way in the desert where there seems to be no way. And I will give drink to my people, my chosen, whom I have chosen for myself." So there is a chosen generation that need to raise up. A worshipping people that will praise Him, that will restore things back to the earth for Him. And so I just want to be able to expound a little bit more on what I spoke last year, because if I look at it from now, there is so much more that I can expound, because you see, this Lazarus generation, where Lazarus was resurrected on the 4th day, we are on the 4th candle of the menorah of the feast of Shavuot, which is the 4th feast. So there is a door that is opening, and there is a birthing that's going to come forth. And the birthing is the fullness of the Ruach of Yahuwah that is going to be given to us. And for us to understand that there is going to be a distinction now between a selected group of people that the Father is going to set apart from another kind of people. And these are the people that the Father is going to raise up. And I truly believe that this people is part of the remnant, which is His remnant bride of the 144,000. The ones that I spoke at Shabbat last week, that said that they are the ones that have been sealed. And they are the ones that are sealed while they're on the earth. So we are not going to be... At this time, great catastrophe is happening, but yet it's interesting, they have not left the earth. They are sealed on the earth. So, this Lazarus generation is a generation of a remnant bride that is going to resurrect at the giving of the Ruach. So as the Ruach was given, the apostles came forth into the fullness of their calls. And so I believe that at this Shavuot, just like Passover was a real Passover, and where Yeshua resurrected on the 3rd day, this Lazarus generation is resurrecting like on a 4th day when it seems like impossibility, but they're going to receive the Ruach of Yahuwah to thrust them forth into the fullness of the things that they have been ordained for. So we are not to be focusing on what is going to go on the earth, because yes, they're going to be exposed to many things. And if you've all watched the book of Acts, I spoke about the fact of the movie of the book of Acts. If you've watched the movie of the book of Acts, if you've read the book of Acts, you will understand that these disciples had to face many things. These disciples had to face many challenges, but they were being thrust forth into the fullness of the things that they had been ordained for. And so we too now, in this time, are going to be thrust forth into the fullness of the things that Father has ordained. It's a new day. It's a new dawn. It's a new... Lazarus came out with a brand new resurrected body. He came from a body that was decaying, and he got given a brand new resurrected body to be able to go forth and become an example to many. And even before Yeshua resurrects him, He says, Father, I do not do this for me. I do this for the people so that they may believe that you have sent me. So that they could believe that he was the Son of Yahuwah. And so this Lazarus generation is a generation that's going to come forth, that's really going to be able to, just like the disciples, I believe, do the greatest miracles, the greatest signs, the greatest wonders, the greatest miracles, but at the same time going to face great persecution. And I can honestly tell you about that, because persecution will start at your own house. And as I've spoken it, I'm already right now in a process of being persecuted. And so that is why I know that prophetically, if I'm speaking something prophetically, I will live what I am prophetically speaking. Because that's how many times Father works with prophets. They have to birth the things that are going to come forth. They must birth it. And so when the Father spoke to me about this Lazarus, when he gave me the whole teaching of this Lazarus, it was really to do with the 12 tribes. And because Mary represented one lot of people, Mary represents the house of Israel, and Martha represents the house of Judah. And if you listen to the teaching, I go beautifully into that for you to understand how the two of them come together, how the Father revealed that to me. I've never had anybody see that or explain that. It was a divine revelation that came to me from heaven. But you see, this Lazarus represents the remnant bride that is going to arise, one who will take him at his word, one who will be anointed, who was dead but is now alive, whom people have thought, they're not even well-known people. They might not even be well-known people. They're not even people that necessarily have these huge ministries out there. They might just be little intercessors that people have never even given the time of day for, but they will be raised up like Stephen. Stephen was chosen, that he was supposed to have been serving the people. But while serving the people, he had been anointed with the Ruach of Yahuwah. And therefore he started to speak in boldness and started to proclaim the gospel of Yahuwah, the truth of his word, until they eventually stoned him to death. And this group of people are obedient. They will be the ones that will follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They will be a people that are made up of the two houses. Because you see, it was Mary, it was Martha, but Lazarus comes forth as the full house of the 12 tribes. And so the house that's sealed is made up of the 12 tribes of the house of Israel, the 144,000 that has been sealed. So Abba is truly wanting to be able to bring forth a new creation, a new generation, a generation that he has left for the final run. And this generation are the ones that are going to have the two houses that they represent, the house of Judah, the house of Israel. But this Lazarus generation is a company of people that walk in the fullness of spirit and truth. And so I just want to be able to explain to you, because I now have the deeper revelation of what Abba Yahuwah has shown me in terms of how this falls in with this that the Father is wanting to do in terms of Shavuot. So I'm going to first start by us having to look at Exodus. Where does Shavuot start? Where does everything start? It starts with Exodus chapter 19, where we start with Exodus, because Exodus starts with in Shavuot starts with Exodus chapter 19, because this is exactly where we have a bride being called forth. And so if we want to be able to understand who is the remnant of people that the Father is going to set aside, this is the understanding of the people. And that is why I say there's going to be many that are gathering for Pentecost and for all of this, but this is a very specific group of people, because they are the ones that are going to follow the Lamb wherever he goes. And we're going to look and see that on the third new moon, so we have just entered into the third new moon. On Sunday, we just entered into the third new moon, so we have now just entered into the third month. After the children of Israel had come out of the land of Mitzrayim, and on this day they came to the wilderness of Sinai. And we have just started reading the book of Numbers, which is now when we enter into this time of really going deeper into the wilderness, of when they've done their little venture now. And for they set out from Rephidim. So we really, the book of Numbers is where we're really going to look deeper into their wilderness experience. So they've already come out. They've gone through this time of where they've been given they were given the Torah, and yet now they're going to, once they've received the Torah, then they go into the wilderness, because the wilderness is going to be where their tests are. So we are going to receive the Ruach, as I truly believe that this is a real Shavuot, just like it was a real Passover, because if it was a real Passover where Yeshua resurrected on the Shabbat, and he died on the Wednesday, resurrected on the Shabbat, so the Shavuot is a real Shavuot, because we are exactly on the timetable as what it would have been when he would have ascended into heaven on the 40th day, and when his Ruach was given to us on the 50th day. And so we are going to look at Exodus chapter 19 from verse 4. And he says, so we've started already that it's the wilderness of Sinai. And you have seen what I did to the Mitzrites, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. And now, if you diligently, so we need to understand, the Father revealed to me that Exodus chapter 19 is the ketubah. The ketubah is the marriage contract. A ketubah is a marriage contract. This is when a bride, like say for example, a bride is going to be betrothed. She's betrothed. It's not yet the consummation of the marriage. It's the betrothal. Now, the betrothal is when the bridegroom to be is going to now take a bride. So he chooses his bride. Now he goes to his bride and he gives the bride a ketubah. And this is the marriage contract. It's the contract to say, this is the contract that I put together for you to be able to betroth yourself to me, for you to marry me. This is the contract that I'm going to give you. And if you adhere to the contract of what he gives you, and you say, yes, I accept this, then there's a betrothal. And he gives her that ketubah, and that ketubah is her marriage contract that she receives. And then he goes away and he prepares a place for her. And then he comes back then eventually, once he's gone to prepare the place, he comes back then to be able to have the consummation of the marriage. And that's when they will then have the marriage celebration. So a betrothal in terms of the Hebrew mindset is not like our engagement where it's just, oh, we engaged now. It's an engagement, but it's seen as a betrothal. So it's already when you have made the commitment to say, I do. I will marry you. And the marriage day is just the consummation of when they finally, the two become one flesh. And that is why it was Joseph and Mary, they were betrothed. And that's why it was a big sin that Mary was pregnant, because how could she have been pregnant? They were betrothed, but they hadn't had the consummation of the marriage. And he was having to now secretly want to put her away. Because why? because there was no marriage. They had not consummated the marriage, so how could she be pregnant? But we know that the angel of Yahuwah appears to him, and how then he accepts Mary. But you see, she was a virgin because they were betrothed, but they had not yet consummated the marriage. So we need to understand that this Exodus chapter 19 was the betrothal. When the Father is saying, I want you to become my bride. Will you accept to become my bride? Will you accept this day to be betrothed to me? But I'm going to give you my set of rules. I'm going to give you my set of instructions. And if you are prepared to keep these sets of instructions, then you will be my betrothed. You will be my bride. So do you see, everybody wants to be the Father's bride. But a bride has to accept the bridegroom's marriage contract. And this is the one thing that the church does not teach, nor do they explain. Because you see, Yeshua becomes the full package. Of when we receive Yeshua, we receive the full package. Of where we will have received him in having Torah, and having received him in having the fullness of the prophets. And we are going to look at this in the things that is going to unfold for us today. As once you listen to the teaching of Lazarus, these are the things that we need to understand. So, here is our ketubah. So he says, you have seen what I did to you, to the Mitzrites, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. So we need to understand the Father wants a people for himself. And which was what he already wanted in the Garden of Eden from the beginning. So now verse 5, and it says, and if. So you see that if. This is the ketubah. So this is the marriage contract that's going to make the difference whether you're going to be that bride or whether you're not going to be that bride. So he says, if you diligently obey my voice and shall guard my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession above all the peoples, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a reign of priests and a set-apart nation. Those are the words which you are to speak to the children of Israel. So you see, this is what's going to make these people a reign of priests, a chosen generation, a generation that is going to be able to come and cleanse themselves, because it says, and shall be prepared by the third day. Are we in the third day? Don't confuse the fact that I'm saying Lazarus came forth on the fourth day. I am tying up Lazarus on the fourth day to the fourth feast of the menorah. And the fact that they are being birthed, it's a people that are being birthed at a time of when it's going to be like of the darkness of the hour. It's like these are a new people that is going to come from where there would have been a decomposing already that would have taken place. But remember what I said to you, the season that we're in is the season of the third day. And this is when the Father spoke to me, when he said to me at Pesach, just before Pesach, when the Father said to me, we are in the third day, because this is, I explained already that 3 years ago, on 2017, when the Father got me to do the prophetic work for what is to be released now. And so, listen to what he says. And so, he turns around and he says, let's look at verse 9. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, see, I am coming to you in the thick cloud, so that the people hear when I speak with you and believe you forever. So is the Torah of Moshe, is the Torah that's going to be given to Moshe by Abba Yahuwah, is it ever going to be done away with? No, because it says they will believe you, Moshe, forever. And Moshe reported the words of the people to Yahuwah. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, go to the people and set them apart today and tomorrow, and they shall wash their garments. So you see, in these 3 days, today, tomorrow, by Sunday, we have been cleansed, set apart for the Father, and shall be prepared on the third day. For on the third day, Yahuwah shall come down upon Mount Sinai before the eyes of all the people. So you see, he's coming down. And he is wanting to be able to now give them his ketubah, give them his marriage contract, give them the set of rules and regulations, the set of marriage contract. It's a marriage contract. It's the ketubah to say, if this is what you're going to do, then you will be my treasured possession, my priests, those whom I have chosen for myself, a set apart nation. And look and see, and not so, okay, let's look at from verse 13. Not a hand is to touch it, but he shall certainly be stoned and shot with an arrow. Whether man or beast, he shall not live. When the yobal, so when the shofar sounds long, let them come near the mountain. And Moshe came down from the mountain to the people and set the people apart, and they washed their garments. So you see, they had set themselves apart, they had purified themselves, they had repented, and prepared by the third day. Okay, look, we say repented, but in their case, they washed their garments. Do not come near a wife, and it came to be on the third day. So you see, this is the third day. It's the third day of the season that we are in the mountain, that there were thunder and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountain, and a voice of a shofar was very strong, and all the people who were in the camp trembled. And so we need to understand that when the Father came and he revealed himself to them in the thunder, in the lightning, in smoke. Let's look and see verses 18. And Mount Sinai was in smoke, all of it, because Yahuwah descended upon it in fire. So we are going to look and see that Yahuwah is a consuming fire. And its smoke went up like the smoke of a furnace, and all the mountain trembled exceedingly. Every single time Father wanted an offering, it was an offering made with fire. Whether it was going to be an incense offering, the coals of fire had to be taken from the altar, the sacrificial altar, and given on the incense altar in order to be able to be burnt for him. So always there is fire involved in terms of an offering that is being given to Father. But yet we want to offer him our lives, but we don't want to have any fire in our lives. That's impossible. There's no glory without there being a fire. There's no glory. And I have been told that gold is purified 21 times, 3 times 7. So I think silver is purified 7 times, but gold is purified 21 times. And so it's 3 times 7, not 3 times 7, 7, 14, 21. 3 times 7, that it's going to have to be purified. So it's almost like that third day effect. At the third process of 7, and 7 being his perfect number, that this refinement of gold, that Abba Yahuwah can see himself in that reflection of that pure gold. And so we need to understand that the glory of Abba Yahuwah comes in the darkness, and it comes from purification of fire. And so he comes with the voice of a shofar. So the Father brings a shofar sound, and he brings a fire. And this is now where we start to see where the Torah was to be given. But unfortunately, at verse 20 we see, in Exodus 20:20 we see that Moshe said to the people, do not fear, for Yahuwah has come to prove you, and in order that his fear be before you, so that you do not sin. So you see, he tells them not to fear, but they go into fear, and we know what happens after this. And then after this, unfortunately, the commands get written upon the tablets of stone, and then Moshe breaks them, goes back up, and gets given the next set that gets eventually put into the ark of the covenant, which is where his glory will dwell. So how can we have glory without the Torah being written upon the tablets of our hearts? Because that's exactly what the giving of the Torah is all about. all of this of Shavuot is we received the Torah. And so we see the fulfillment of this being done. When we look, let's just go quickly to Jeremiah 31:31. Oh, actually, let's go to Ezekiel 36, so that we know that this is the fullness. Ezekiel 36 of, we receive the Ruach. Okay, so let's go look at where the Ruach of Yahuwah, then this is what happens, and then the Ruach of Yahuwah gets given to us in Acts. So in Acts chapter 2, Acts chapter 1, Yahushua says that they are to tarry and wait until the fullness, then until the Ruach gets given to us. And now we see that in Acts chapter 2 from verse 1 it says, and when the day of the festival of Shavuot had come, they were all with one mind in one place. And suddenly there came a sound with heaven, as of a rushing mighty wind, and it filled all the house where they were sitting. And there appeared to them divided tongues as of fire. You see, that was the fire that had come already on Mount Sinai, and settled on each one of them. And they were all filled with the set-apart Spirit, and began to speak with other tongues, as the Spirit gave them to speak. So you see, they received the Ruach of Yahuwah that was given to them, that was prophesied by Yahushua. He prophesied it. Let's look and see. Let's go and look at John chapter. We go look at John chapter 16. John chapter 16, he says, Yahushua speaking to his disciples before he's going to, this is when he's having the Last Supper with them, and he's speaking to the disciples, and he's saying to them at the table, at the Last Supper, in John chapter 16, verses 7, he says, but I say the truth to you. It is better for you that I go away. For if I do not go away, the Helper, the Ruach of Yahuwah, the Helper there is the Ruach of Yahuwah, shall not come to you at all. But if I go, I shall send him to you. And having come, now it's important that you listen to this. And having come, he shall convict the world concerning sin. So, what is the purpose of the Ruach having come? He needs to convict the world of sin. So, I need you to understand this, because with this outpouring that's going to come now, when this outpouring comes, it's going to be the opportunity for the world now to be able to be convicted of sin in a more powerful way, as more and more people are going to need to turn to the Father, because there's a great harvest that needs to come in. So, listen to what he says. And having come, he shall convict the world concerning sin and concerning righteousness. So, the Ruach of Yahuwah that is upon his set-apart ones need to teach the people what it means to come back into righteousness, because righteousness is coming back to ways of Torah. And concerning judgment, because the judgments of Yahuwah are going to come, because the people do not learn righteousness lest these judgments come. So, you see, some of us have received this, and we listened last week, even when we did the Torah portion reading last week of Hosea chapter 2, where in Hosea chapter 2, I spoke and I said, he hedges us in. He brings us into that hedging in. He brings us into that wilderness so that he can speak tenderly to our hearts, so that he can get us to be able to return back to his truths. Because we've pursued our lovers. We have kept our own feasts. We have kept our own solemn, we've had our own solemn assemblies. We've had our own feast days and Sabbath days and new moon days. We've done our own thing according to our own calendar. We've changed the Sabbath to the Sunday. We've changed the worship. We've changed everything. But he says that now he's going to have to judge the people to be able to come back into righteousness. Concerning sin, because they do not believe in me. And to believe in him is to be able to not just believe, but to follow after him, do the things that I did. Concerning righteousness, because I go to my Father, and you see me no more. Concerning judgment, because the ruler of this world is judged. So you see, when he comes, he's going to judge the ruler of this world. But for him to judge the ruler of this world, he's going to release his judgments upon the earth. That's going to bring much catastrophe as we've started to unfold the book of Revelation and we've started to understand many things that are coming forth from there. I still have many things to say to you, but you are not able to bear them now. But when he comes, the Ruach, the Spirit of truth, so we need to establish that there's the Spirit of truth. So we need to be the worshippers that are worshipping him in spirit and in truth. He shall guide you into all the truth. So you see, the Ruach of Yahuwah is coming, and he's going to be able to reveal the deeper revelations of his word to us, so that we may come back to his truths. For he shall not speak from himself, but whoever he hears, he shall speak, or whatever he hears, he shall speak, and he shall announce to you what is to come. So you see, he's going to announce to you the things that are going to happen in the end. Only the Ruach of Yahuwah, in the fullness when he's given, can open up these deeper. Remember what it was written in the book of Daniel, where he says, seal up these prophecies until the appointed time, when they will then be opened, and the revelation of the things will be given to us. But who is going to give us the revelation of these things? None other than the Ruach of Yahuwah. And he shall esteem me, for he shall take of what is mine and announce it to you. So do we see the Ruach of Yahuwah is going to be given to us so that we may be able to have the deeper revelation of the things of the Word. And it's to be able to turn from our sin. And what is that sin? The transgression of the Torah. And come back to his ways. And so if we now go look at, because we were going to go there to Ezekiel. Let's go look at Ezekiel chapter 36. So the Ruach of Yahuwah has not been given to us so that we can just have a fleshly experience, which is what the church seeks after. And that's going to be part of the false fire. That's part of the false fire that they are chasing after. Not the true purging, cleansing Ruach of Yahuwah that comes to purge, that comes to cleanse, that comes to purify, that comes to set apart. No, there's a false fire. And the false fire is this kundalini false fire. And this false fire that comes wants us to have fleshly experiences. So it's, it feels good. And my spirit man must feel good. Not my spirit man, my flesh man must feel good. But there's no depth. Because when the fire really comes, of the true fire that's coming now, they are not going to stand. Because there's a great falling away that's going to come. And so if all they've had was the Ruach of Yahuwah to give them a manifestation of the flesh, it's not going to stand. It's not going to stand. Because at the end of the day, the manifestation of the flesh is not going to be able to have the truth embedded within you, which is what you're going to have to stand for. Because every single time those disciples spoke with authority and power, they were preaching the word of Yahuwah with authority and power. They were speaking truth into the innermost parts of the people's hearts. That was the truth that was setting them free, and they were coming into the fullness, and they were receiving Yahushua Mashiach. And they were then being filled with the Ruach of Yahuwah to be able to become his disciples, to be able to follow him. But you see, we have had such lies being given to us, and we have had a counterfeit fire that has come to us at Shavuot that has not been the truth. It's a counterfeit. It's not the fullness of the Ruach that is to be able to come and bring us into the fullness of what Abba has in store for us, to be able to walk out the path of set apartness and purification and purity and holiness, sanctification, and to bring us back into his ways. So in Ezekiel 36 we get this very clearly, why the Ruach was given. So in Ezekiel 36 he turns around and he says, from verse 20, let's just look from verse 20. And when they come from the nations, wherever they went, they profaned my name apart. They proclaimed my set-apart name, for it was said to them, these are the people of Yahuwah, and yet they have gone out of his land. But I had compassion on my set-apart name, which the house of Israel had profaned among the nations wherever they went. Therefore say to the house of Israel, thus says the Master Yahuwah, I do not do this for your sake, O house of Israel, but for my set-apart name's sake, which you have profaned among the nations wherever you went. So do you understand why this remnant are a remnant that has set apart his name and that are coming back into the fullness of his name? Because they are a people that have restored the name of Abba Yahuwah back to its rightful place. That the name of Yahuwah is not just the fact that you know his name, but the character of that name, that your life represents the character of who he is, because you uphold everything of who he's about, and there will be no lie found in you. And I shall set apart my great name, which has been profaned among the nations, which you have profaned in the midst, and the nations shall know that I am Yahuwah, declares the Master Yahuwah, when I am set apart in you before their eyes. And I shall take you from among the nations, and I shall gather you out of all the lands, and I shall bring you back into your own land. Is that not what we read in Hosea chapter 2, when he goes and he takes his bride, and he brings his bride, and I shall sow her back into the land which she was expelled from? That is Israel. That is the Israel that was the ones that went into the dispersion. Now Judah still stayed partially faithful. Partially, I say, because they were not fully faithful. But Israel he divorced, and that's why he needed to bring her back. And that's what Yahushua has done. That's why Yahushua said, I came for the lost tribes of the house of Israel, because he came to graft them back in. So if you are just not being grafted back into the house of Israel, then you are a branch sapping of your own, and you will be cut off, because you have to be grafted into the covenant of the original olive tree, which is Israel, which is the covenant that was given to Abraham from the beginning. Now listen to what he says in verse 25. And I shall sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean. So he's going to sprinkle water on us. That was part of the baptism of water that we are going to see with John, that he baptized with water. But there shall be one that will come that will not only baptize you with water, but he will come and baptize you with the Ruach and with fire. So that's what we need to look at. And I shall sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean. From all your filthiness and from all your idols I cleanse you. So just what we spoke in Hosea chapter 2, where we spoke about in Hosea chapter 2 that he's going to draw for himself a bride that he's going to cleanse. And I shall give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. And I shall take the heart of stone out of your flesh, and I shall give you a heart of flesh. And put my spirit within you, and I shall cause you to walk in my laws and guard my right rulings, and you shall do them. There you see. So what is the Ruach of Yahuwah is going to give us? Why were we given the Ruach of Yahuwah? The Ruach of Yahuwah was given us so that what? So that we can cause to walk in his laws and guard his right rulings, and we shall do them. And you shall dwell in the land that I gave to your fathers, and you shall be my people, and I shall be your lure. There, did he say he's looking for a chosen generation, a people? And I shall save you from all your uncleanliness, and I shall call for the grain and increase it, and I shall bring no scarcity of food upon you. So you see what is about to come with the horse of the famine that is about to come. The red horse is going to bring the scarcity of food. No, the horse that's going to bring the scales, the one that's going to be for the scales, is going to bring the scarcity of food, which is the third horse. And then the fourth horse is the pale horse that's going to bring the scarcity of food. So there's much scarcity of food going to come. But he says, I will bring no scarcity of food upon you, which means he will be the one to sustain us in that time, like he did Elijah, like he did his disciples. He gave them, like he did his Israelites in the desert, he gave them manna from heaven. So he's the one who's going to sustain us. So it's important that you see this as it being part of an end time thing that's going to come. And that is why he's going to be able to bring his Ruach. Because even though the disciples, after they received the Ruach, they went into the greatest trials, the greatest test, the greatest persecution, and many of them died for their faith. But yet, and they were thrown in prison. But yet, how many miracles did he do? Where he delivered them out of jail, where he put words in their mouth where they were to speak before the council. Mighty miracles he did. And so, we are going to look at, quickly, let's just go look at Luke. We go look at Luke chapter 3, verses 16. And it says, Yochanan answered, saying to them, I indeed immerse you in water. Yochanan answered, saying to them, I indeed immerse you in water, but one mightier than I is coming, whose sandals straps I am not worthy to loosen. He shall immerse you in the set-apart spirit and fire. So we need to understand there is the set-apart Ruach that gets given us, the Ruach of Yahuwah, but there is a fire. And this fire is part of Abba's purging. And I believe that what we are about to receive now is not just the Ruach of Yahuwah, but his fire. And listen to what he says. His winnowing fork is in his hand, and he shall thoroughly cleanse his threshing floor. So what is that threshing floor? The threshing floor is when you have to beat the chaff, and you beat it, and you beat it until listen to what happens, the threshing floor, and gather the wheat into his storehouse, but the chaff he shall burn with unquenchable fire. So what the Father is showing me, that there is now, at this Shavuot, there's going to be a separation between the chaff and the wheat in a very powerful way. Because isn't it interesting, on this very day, here in South Africa, as we are about to celebrate Shavuot, the church is celebrating Pentecost, and South African government, our president, called for a national day of prayer. So on this day, I am praying and I'm saying, Father, truly, as these people are going to come to seek you on this very day, of when we are receiving the Ruach of Yahuwah, that there will be a fire that's going to come, that's going to have to really purge the hearts of the people to turn back to you. Because we have looked at Moshe, but now we are going to look at Elijah. And the fire that needs to come, because we need to look at the fire that needs to come. So let's go now and look at 1 Kings chapter 18, because this is where the whole message needs to come together. So we're going to look at 1 Kings 18. And this is very interesting because Elijah also raises up at a time of great famine. This Elijah that is raising up, there's going to be, I believe, a company of people that are going to raise up that's going to be like an Elijah company of people. They are going to be filled with the fire that was upon Elijah. That these people that are going to raise up are going to be like an Elijah company of people. And the reason why I say that, because in 2018, on En Karim, which is the place where John the Baptist was born. John the Baptist was the first Elijah. He came in the spirit of Elijah. And I believe that those that are going to come, that there's a company of people that's not just going to be one person. That which John the immerser was doing, Yahuchanan the immerser was doing, calling the people to repentance, calling them back to the ways of Abba Father, calling them repenting, and that they were to come back to Abba Yahuwah. I believe that this remnant of people are going to have to raise up with the spirit of Elijah, because this is what the Father spoke to me when I was in En Karim in 2018, to be able to call down the fire from heaven. And He gave me a staff, and the bottom part of it was burnt, calling down the fire from heaven. I go into more detail in that in the teaching, so I'm not going to go into all of that now. But I believe that that is the people that is going to raise up. And look here, if you look at 1 Kings 18, from verses 2, it says, "And therefore Eliyahu went to present himself to Ahab, and the scarcity of food in Shomron was severe." So Eliyahu was raising up to restore an altar at a time of when there was great scarcity of food upon the earth. And I know upon the land, especially on the land of in the land of Israel, there was scarcity of food. And so I believe that this company of people that are going to raise up, they are going to do great exploits in a time of when there's going to be great scarcity of food, because that is part of the horses, the one that's going to come, the black horse, because it's the white horse, the red horse, the black horse. The black horse is the one that's going to have the scales, where a loaf of bread will be as much as a denarii, a whole day's wages. And so there's going to be already famine will have started from there, and by the time it comes to the pale horse, then there's really very little food. So this Elijah raises up in this time, and we are going to be able to read this Elijah, and we're going to start reading from verses 19. And so, and it says, "And now send and gather all Israel to me on Mount Carmel, and the 450 prophets of Baal, and the 400 prophets of Asherah, and who eat at Jezebel's table." Ahab then sent for all the children of Israel and gathered the prophets on Mount Carmel. Now it's interesting, because right here, Jezebel is being represented she has false prophets that are with her. She has these false prophets that are eating at her table. And these false prophets are sitting there, and they're eating at Jezebel's table. Now, these false prophets in that day, they're different to the false prophets of today, because the false prophets of today, they claim to be prophets of Abba Yahuwah. But it's interesting, because I want you to see something. These are the prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. Now, where else is Jezebel spoken of? Interesting. Jezebel is spoken of in the book of Revelation. So let's go look at the book of Revelation, because we need to understand that this is symbolizing again a false prophetic that is there in this false spirit of Yahuwah. And it says, let's see, to the church of Thyatira. I mean, I'm getting this as the Father is giving it to me. Okay, and to the messenger of the assembly of Thyatira write, this says the Son of Yahuwah, whose eyes like a flame of fire. Okay, so again, it's speaking about fire, and this was the fire that Eliyahu was sending from heaven, a fire that was going to come upon the prophets of Baal, that was going to be able to come up against the prophets of Baal. And this is now where Yeshua, interesting, comes as fire. He comes as with eyes like a flame of fire, and his feet like burnished brass. So he's coming with a fire, and he's going to confront these prophets of Baal, just like Eliyahu confronts the prophets of Baal that ate at Jezebel's table. Now listen to what it says. And I know your works, and love, and service, and belief, and your endurance. And as for your works, the last are more than the first. So these are people that do great works for the Father. They're very busy with the things of the Father. But I hold against you that you allow the woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess, to teach and lead my servants astray, to commit whoring, to eat food offered to idols. So they are following a Jezebel, and this Jezebel is the false prophetic that is speaking false prophetic things. They're tapping into the Ruach of Yahuwah, but what spirit many times? Is it a familiar spirit, or is it truly the Spirit of Yahuwah that is being able to ask the people to repent, to purge, to come back to Him, to turn the hearts of the people back to the Father? Are all the prophetic words that they're giving turning people back to the Father, turning them to be able to repent from their wicked ways and come back to the Father? Or is it just words that are tickling their ears to be able to have nice things that just satisfy our flesh some more? What is it? And I gave her time to repent of her whoring, and she did not repent. See, I'm throwing her into a sick bed, and those who commit adultery with her into great affliction. So what is this great affliction? So you see, at this Shavuot, there is going to be a fire that's going to come, that's going to separate the chaff from the wheat, the winnowing fork, and it's also going to be able to separate, because this is Elijah that called down the fire from heaven. And remember, John spoke, and he came in the spirit of Elijah to turn the people to repent back to the Father. And he's saying that he's going to throw them in a sick bed, and those who commit adultery with her, and into great affliction, unless they repent of their works. So this is the time now, this Shavuot, where they are going to have an opportunity to bow their knee. Father's even given us a day of prayer, and the whole of the church is celebrating Pentecost. This is their time to bow their knee, to repent, to turn back to the true Creator of heaven and earth, and turn back to His ways. And what was the reason for this Shavuot being given? For them to be able to have written Torah upon their hearts, to come back to His word. But if they do not hear His voice, and they do not hear His cry, there is a purging going to come, because it says, I gave them time to repent. Otherwise, they're going to be thrown into great affliction. So this tribulation, affliction is coming. And I shall say to her children, and I shall slay her children with death. And all the assemblies shall know that I am the one searching the kidneys and the hearts, and I shall give to each one according to your works. And to you I say, to the rest in Thyatira, as many as do not possess this teaching, and who have not known the depths of Hasatan. So there's even these people out there that want to teach you, or to dwell on all these heavenly realms, and then they want to teach you all these depths of Hasatan. We do not need to know the depths of Hasatan. We need to understand. We need to understand what that He's in rule. In everything that we do, we are to seek the Ruach of Yahuwah. But people write books about all these things, calling the demon this thing and this thing and this thing, and carrying on. And for what? For what? Yeshua addressed the demon and commanded it out. And it happened to tell us that his name was Legion. But we don't need to go and know the depths of the things of Hasatan, the depths of the darkness kingdom. We need to know the depths. If we were to spend more time in knowing the depths of Abba Yahuwah's kingdom, I think we would be better off. And he says, and as they call them, and I am not putting on you another burden, but hold fast what you have until I come. And he who overcomes and guards my works until the end, to him I shall give authority over the nations. And he shall shepherd. Now listen. To him who overcomes, okay, and guards my works until the end. So we are going to have to overcome. And we are going to have to guard his works until the end. To him I shall give authority over the nations. And he shall shepherd them with a rod of iron, and a potter's vessel shall be broken to pieces, as I also have received from my Father. And I shall give him the morning star, and he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the assemblies. So, here we see Elijah confronting the prophets of Baal, sitting and eating at the table of Jezebel. And we saw in the movie of the book of Acts, we saw the disciples having to confront these religious leaders that were Pharisees, filled with religion, but they were not filled with the Ruach of Yahuwah. They were very religious in their ways. And they were having to confront them. Just like Elijah here is going to confront the prophets of Baal. Just like it's spoken of here, where the Father is going to be able to contend with this false prophetic that is raised up and led how many of his people? How many times in this Bible alone in the New Testament it says, beware of the false prophets, beware of the false prophets. And false prophets will come upon you, and false prophets will lead you astray. How many times? So, let's look and see now. And now he gathered, okay, and then he sent for all the children of Israel and gathered the prophets on Mount Carmel. And Eliyahu came to the people and said, and this is the commission for the Shavuot. How long would you keep hopping between two opinions? So, how long will you fornicate with the things of the church ways, which would keep a Sunday and keep all these other holidays and keep all these New Year's and whatever it is, and the Sundays and Christmas and Easter and all these other festivals that is not Abba Yahuwah's festivals? I'm interpreting this for what you need to understand, what needs to be for now. If Yahuwah is a Lua, follow him. And if Baal, follow him. But the people answered him not a word. So you need to understand, you are either going to follow these false prophetic things of this Jezebel, or you are either going to follow the ways of Abba Yahuwah and come back to this Torah and come back to his teachings from Genesis to Revelation. And the things that he has commanded that we are to keep and that we are to adhere to. And Eliyahu said to the people, I alone am left a prophet, okay? So let's go now and look at verse 24. So he says, look what Eliyahu says. Eliyahu said to the people, I also am left a prophet of Yahuwah, but the prophet of Baal are 450 men. Now let them give us 2 bulls, and let them choose 1 bull for themselves, and cut it in pieces and lay it on the wood, but set no fire. And I prepare the other bull, and shall lay it on the wood, but set no fire. But you shall call on the name of your mighty one, and I shall call on the name of Yahuwah. And Yahuwah, who answers by fire, he is Elua. So all the people answered and said, the word is good. So you see, Yahuwah answers by fire. We need to remember that. He answers by fire. And fire that brings a cleansing, a purging. Now let's look from verse 30. And so now he gets them to be able to prepare, and now the people, the Baal worship, they're calling out, but nothing's happening. Then Eliyahu says to all the people, come closer to me. And all the people came closer to him, and he repaired the slaughter place of Yahuwah that was broken down. Very important that you need to understand. There is an altar of true worship to the Father. That is the worshippers that are going to worship him in spirit and in truth, spoken of in John chapter 4. Let's quickly go there so that we can see that he says, my Father is looking for true worshippers. And we're going to look at this, and we're going to end with this as we're going to look at this. Not end with this, but we're going to end with who's the true worshippers. So he says, you worship, in John chapter 4 verse 22, you worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, because deliverance is of the Yehudim. But the hour is coming, and now is, when true worshippers, which means there has to be false worshippers, shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father also does seek such to worship him. Eloah is spirit, and those who worship him need to worship him in spirit and in truth. So you see, we receive the Ruach of Yahuwah because we need the Ruach of Yahuwah, and we need this word, which is the truth. So we need the Ruach of Yahuwah, who is the Spirit, and we need the truth, which is the word of this Bible. And the spoken word by the Ruach. So now he turns around and he says to them, and Eliyahu took 12 stones. So you see, the two houses that need to become one house. The house of Israel and the house of Judah that needs to become one house. Eliyahu took 12 stones, according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Yaakov, to whom the word of Yahuwah had come, saying, Israel is your name. And with the stones he built a slaughter place in the name of Yahuwah, and he made a trench around the slaughter place large enough to hold 2 seahs of seed. And he arranged the wood, and cut the bull in pieces, and laid it on the wood, and said, fill your jars with water, and pour it on the ascending offering on the wood. So do you see, the baptism of water comes upon this altar. So these 12 tribes shall be cleansed with the baptism of water, with the purification of the water. He sprinkles water on us. We read in Ezekiel chapter 36 verse 25, he sprinkles water on us, so he purifies us through the baptism of water, and then the baptism of fire. So, it says the ascending offering and the wood, and then he said, do it a second time. And there he did it a second time. And he said, do it a third time. Then he did it a third time. So you see, on the third day, again, 3 times, that this wood is now being immersed in water. Because this house of Israel, this altar of the house of Israel, and the worship that needs to be given, needs to be soaked with water. And that is exactly what the Father did with us at the conference. The very first weekend when we had our first conference of the Ark of His Presence, the altar outside, the brazen altar, was soaked with water because it came down hectic that night. And the next morning, the smoke was coming out of that on its own. Smoke coming out of that altar. As if He was bringing His incense coming out of that altar that had been cleansed and purified. And the water flowed around the slaughter place, and he filled the trenches with water too. And it came to be at the time of the bringing of the evening offering that Eliyahu, the prophet, came near and said, Yahuwah, Eloah of Avram, Yitzhak, Israel. Please check there. He doesn't say the Yahuwah of the Eloah of Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, which is how this Bible is always read, the Eloah of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. No, it says the Yahuwah, Eloah of Avram, Yitzhak, and Israel, because now Israel has been restored. He's no longer Jacob, the deceiver, the deceived one, but he's Israel, the one who has been wrestled with the angel. And who is the angel? The angel that he wrestles with is Yeshua himself. He receives the fullness of Yeshua. And when he receives the fullness of Yeshua, he becomes the fullness of the house of Israel. Because Yeshua, you will see, he's going to restore both wait, we're going to see. Let me not run ahead of myself. And I, your servant, have done all these matters by your word. Answer me, O Yahuwah. Answer me, and let this people know that you are Yahuwah Eloah, and you shall turn their hearts back to you again. So you see, everything about Shavuot is turning our hearts back to the Father again, restoring us back to that which has been lost, restoring us back to the fullness of His Ruach, that we need to hear His voice and follow Him, and restoring us back to the Torah, that we need to be able to have it written upon the tablets of our hearts. So it's restoring us back to the fullness of who Abba Yahuwah is. And then the fire of Yahuwah fell and consumed the ascending offering and the wood and the stones and the dust, and it licked up the water and was in the trench. And all the people saw and fell on their faces and said, Yahuwah, He is Eloah. Yahuwah, He is Eloah. So the Father is about to reveal Himself through His people, that they will know that He is Yahuwah. And He's going to raise up an Elijah generation that is going to have Elijah, but Moshe, fullness of Torah. So we're going to see this people now. Let's go and look at Matthew, chapter 17. Let's go look as we start to bring this together. Matthew chapter 17. And now look and see. In Matthew chapter 17, and it says, from verse 2, and it says, okay, let's start at verse 1. And after 6 days, Yeshua took Kepha, Yaakov, and Yochanan, his brother, and brought them up on a high mountain by themselves. And he was transformed before them, and his face shone like the sun. His garments became as white as the light. And see, Moshe and Eliyahu appeared to them, talking with him. So Moshe and Eliyahu appeared to them, talking with him. So now you see Moshe is there and Eliyahu is there. Wow, why the two of them? And Kepha answering said to Yahushua, Master, is it good for us to be there? If you wish, let us make 3 booths. Okay, so I just wanted to show you Eliyahu and Moshe with Yahushua. So Yahushua is coming in his glorified body, but standing on the one side will have been Moshe, and on the other side Eliyahu. Who are they representing? We are going to see this now. And now look at what it says. Yahuwah says, this is from heaven. Verse 5. While he was still speaking, see, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and see, a voice came out of the cloud saying, this is my son, the beloved, in whom I did delight. Hear him. Hear him. Follow him. Obey him. What he does, you will do. And when the taught ones heard, they fell on their faces and were afraid. Now look at what he says. And his taught ones, in verse 10, and his taught ones asked him, saying, why then do the scribes say that Eliyahu has to come first? And Yahushua answering said to them, Eliyahu is indeed coming first and shall restore all. So you see, the spirit of Eliyahu is to restore all. Is to restore us back to who? Let's go see. Let's go see. Let's go and see. I touched on this, but the Father is just telling me, go there. So let's go look at Malachi. Malachi chapter 4. Malachi chapter 4. And it says, okay, chapter 4 from verse 2. But he who fears my name, the Son of Righteousness, shall arise. Did we read about the righteousness that the Ruach of Yahuwah is to come to be able to give us the righteousness? Righteousness shall arise with healing in his wings, and you shall go out and leap for joy like calves. And you shall trample the wrongdoers, for they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet. On the day that I do this, says Yahuwah of hosts. Now this is the day. Look, let's start at the beginning. Chapter 4 verse 1. For look, the day shall come, burning like a furnace, and all the proud and every wrongdoer shall be stubble. And the day that shall come shall burn them up, and Yahuwah of hosts, which leaves to them neither root nor branch. So there's a day of his fire. He comes, the day of Yahuwah comes like fire. It's a consuming fire. He is a consuming fire. So let's look and see. Then he says, verse 4, very important. Remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant. So you see, Moshe and Elijah come together. Remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant, which I commanded him in Horeb, for all Israel's laws and right rulings. See, I'm sending you Eliyahu the prophet before the coming of the great and awesome day of Yahuwah. So he's telling them, remember Moshe. You need to return back to the Torah of Moshe, right rulings and his Torah. And you shall turn the hearts of the father. Now what was the other? The heart of the father back to the children. This one says fathers. Which fathers? The fathers of Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, because that is what is written on. In 1 Kings 18, it says that he will turn the hearts of the children back to the fathers, Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, Israel. And coming of the great, and he shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to the fathers, lest I come and strike the earth with utter destruction. So you see, it's not just, it's turn the hearts of the children back to the father, Abba Yahuwah, father, turning father back to the children, but turning the hearts of the fathers, Avram, Yaakov, and Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, back to the children, so we can come back to Torah, which we no longer have. So that's important that we understand. So here we see clearly that he says Eliyahu must come first, because Eliyahu, which was in the spirit of John the immerser, and what was he doing? Repent and turn back to what you have lost. Turn back to Abba Yahuwah's Torah, his ways. But I say to you that Eliyahu has already come, and they did not recognize him, but did to him whatever they wish. Is this in this same way the son of Adam is also about to suffer by them? And then the taught ones understood that he had spoken to them about Yochanan the immerser. So now look and see. In the spirit of Eliyahu, John the immerser came in the spirit of Eliyahu, and he was beheaded for standing for truth and speaking truth. Yeshua was crucified. And everyone that's going to have to raise up in the spirit of Eliyahu, that's going to have to speak in boldness and truth, is going to be no greater than the servants that have gone before. That's what we need to understand. Even though we're going to do the greatest exploits, but we need to understand, yes, there are some that are going to have to die, and there are others that are going to be spared. Like John died on the island of Patmos. Even though he was put in a boiling pot of oil, nothing happened to him. And so now I want us to be able to look at where we understand Moshe and Eliyahu. Now, Yahushua is standing with Eliyahu and with Moshe. And what is this about? What the Father revealed to me that this is about the fulfillment of Torah and the prophets in Yahushua HaMashiach. When we walk in the fullness of Yahushua, he came to be able to write Torah upon our hearts and walk in the fullness of the prophets. Now let's see if this is not what is written in Matthew chapter 5, as this is the revelation that the Father gave me. And so people that want to receive Yahushua without Torah is impossible. And people who want to receive Torah without Yahushua, it's impossible, because they are one package. And this is what we saw on the Mount of Transfiguration. Yahushua came, he is the fullness. He's the fullness of the manifestation of spirit and truth. He's the fullness of the first fruits offering that was given. He's the first fruits offering that was given, that is worshipping the Father in spirit and in truth. He was filled with the Ruach of Yahuwah. He had the Ruach of Yahuwah. He was filled with the Ruach of Yahuwah. When he was mikved, the Spirit of Yahuwah came upon him. And he walked in the fullness of truth. And so now, if we go look at Matthew chapter 5, look at what he says in Matthew chapter 5, verses 17. Do not think I came to destroy the Torah or the prophets. I did not come to destroy it, but to complete, to uphold, to establish. I came to complete it and to establish it and uphold it in who? In himself. Because Moshe representing the Torah of Yahuwah, Elijah representing the prophets, Elijah bringing down the fire of heaven, and Moshe standing, bringing the fire of heaven to be able to do what? To bring us into a complete new man that walks in the fullness of having Torah and Spirit, the manifestation of hearing the word of Yahuwah being spoken, his manifestation of his spoken word and the manifestation of his written word coming together as one, which is what Yahushua represented. And he came to complete in the fullness as the one new man. He was the fullness of that new man already. He was the first fruits of that new man that resurrected on the third day. And now, this is what he's looking for. Because why? Let's go look again. Revelation chapter 14. And we will end with the scripture of Revelation chapter 14, where he turns around and he says, and look, I saw a lamb, and standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 having the Father's name written upon their foreheads. Remember we read in Ezekiel chapter 36 from verse 20, we read how he's going to restore his name. I will restore my name. So these set apart ones are restoring the altar of worship to the fullness of his name. Now listen to what he says. And I heard the voice out of heaven, like the voice of many waters, and like the voice of a loud thunder. And I heard the sound of harpists playing their harps. And that's why the Father's saying, play the harp, my child. Play the harp, my child. The harp needs to be played because it's the sound of the harp that's going to raise up these worshipping people. That's why I had to go buy the harp to be able to. That's the whole prophetic work that the Father asked me to get, was this harp, to be able to sound this harp, the sound of the harp that's calling forth these people. And they sang a renewed song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and the elders, and no one was able to learn the song except the 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth. And they are those who are not defiled with woman. So this song is a song that no one else can sing. They are those who were not defiled with woman, for they are the maidens. They are those following the Lamb. Listen, they follow the Lamb wherever he leads them. They were redeemed from among men, being first fruits to a lure and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no falsehood. So do you understand why the Father's got to remove all those bold names and all those false things from our lips? And for they are blameless before the throne of Eloah. And we're going to see, and so now we're going to see Revelation chapter 15. Let's just go look at Revelation chapter 15. And I saw like a sea of glass mixed with fire. There's the fire again. And those overcoming the beast. So you see, who are those that are going to come out? The 144,000 were sealed. And they were being redeemed from the earth as a first fruits to the Father. They were being redeemed. And they had the seal upon their forehead. And they were being redeemed. And they were already sealed. In Revelation chapter 7, he has 12,000 from each tribe. 12 tribes. 12,000 from each tribe. And then they're being sealed. And now look at what it says. And I saw like a sea of glass mixed with fire, those overcoming the beast and his image and his mark and the number of his name, standing on the sea of glass, holding harps of Eloah. Did we just read that they were playing the harps and they were singing a song? Okay, let's see what was the song. And they sang the song of Moshe, the servant of Eloah, and the song of the Lamb, saying, Great and marvelous are your works, Yahuwah, El Shaddai, righteous and true are your ways, O sovereign of the set-apart ones. Who shall not fear you, O Yahuwah, and esteem your name, because you alone are kind, because all the nations shall come and worship before you, for your righteousness have been made manifest. So at the end of the day, these are those company that is being redeemed. These are the true worshippers that are going to worship him in spirit and in truth. They are an Elijah company that walk in the fullness of that which calling down fire from heaven. Elijah that took on the prophets of Baal, but they are walking, singing the song of Moshe, because they have Torah written upon the tablets of their hearts. And they are those that are Yahuwah. They are those that have that are following the Lamb wherever he goes. They follow the Lamb, and you see the Lamb stood on Mount Sinai, on the Mount of Transfiguration, with Moshe and Elijah, representing the Torah and the prophets that he's going to fulfill, so that we can understand the fullness of the prophets he's come to fulfill. So he's the fullness of the prophetic, of everything of the prophets, and he's the fullness of the Torah. So when we have Yeshua, we walk in the fullness of Torah, and we will understand the fullness of the prophetic of the prophets, of everything that was spoken has been fulfilled in him. Because Yeshua, it says, heaven will retain him. Acts chapter 3 from verses 19 to 21. Heaven will retain him until the restoration of all things is to happen. So praise Abba Father. May I leave this with you, as this is just that I felt needed to be added to the other teaching of the Lazarus generation that needs to come forth. If you listen to that teaching, you will understand the Lazarus generation, and go into detail in things that was not here, that this was just to be able to bring in Shavuot, because in the Lazarus one, I'm not talking about Shavuot, but the fulfillment of what I'm speaking there, this is the fullness of the fulfillment. So may Abba Father truly bless you all in this time as we prepare for this wonderful outpouring. So let us just close in prayer. Abba Yahuwah, I just want to thank you. I thank you, Abba Father, that truly this is a day of when you are going to bring your fire. And just like Eliyahu had to call down the fire from heaven, and just like your fire that came upon Mount Sinai, and just like your fire will come again when you are going to judge the nations of the world, Father, that this fire will be a consuming, purging fire. You are a consuming fire, and your fire comes to purge, and your fire comes to set apart, and your fire comes to be able to help, to bring a restoration of that which is unto you, to turn the hearts of the people back to you, but to fill us with your power so that we can go forth to be able to proclaim your word with authority and power, just like the disciples did. But that we will be willing to go through the fire of affliction ourselves, just like John himself had to go through, just like Yeshua himself had to go through, just like the disciples had to go through. But that we will shine your glory, just like Stephen, when as he was being martyred, there he saw Yeshua stand up, standing, as he took him. And so, Father, I just want to thank you that at this time of Shavuot, that you are going to raise up your remnant, that you are going to raise up a bride, that there will be a bride that has been willing to sign a ketubah and say, I am willing to walk. I am willing to follow the Lamb wherever he goes. And if the Lamb was willing to go to the slaughter, so will we go to the slaughter. Because we will follow the Lamb wherever he goes. We will not bow our knee. We will not bow our knee to the ways of man. We will not bow our knee to the rulers of this earth. We will not bow our knee to the ways of this world, but that we will bow our knee to Abba Yahuwah alone. And Father, I pray that truly on this day, as the church comes and wants to seek your face for the day of Pentecost, that you will meet with them in a powerful way, and that you will be able to bring them to their knees for those who repent, that they can truly come into the kingdom. But that you are going to separate now the chaff from the wheat, and that you will separate the truth from the lie, and that there will be those that will truly raise up, that people will know these are your true servants. These are those that will carry your presence, and that your ark of your presence, that we become the ark that will carry your presence, that we will become the restoration of the fallen tent of David upon the earth to reflect your glory to a dying people and to a very dark generation. And so I praise and I thank you, Father. May your purposes and plans prevail. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I praise and I thank you, Father. May your kingdom come. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. May you pour out your ruach on all flesh, to bring your purging fire, to be able to bring your righteous judgments upon the earth, as you have spoken in Isaiah 26, lest your judgments come, righteousness cannot be established. Like you have spoken in Psalm 98. Let me just read Psalm 98 as you're just giving this to me now, Father. Psalm 98, that says, and you gave this to me in Israel at the airport. You see, we're going to sing to Yahuwah a new song. Father, I close off with a psalm. Sing to Yahuwah a new song, for he has done wonders. His right hand and his set-apart arm have brought him deliverance. Yahuwah has made his deliverance, his righteousness, he has openly shown before the eyes of the nations. He has remembered his loving commitment and his trustworthiness to the house of Israel, your chosen ones, Abba. All the ends of the earth have seen the deliverance of our Lua. They have heard about Yahushua Mashiach. Raise a shout to Yahuwah, all the earth. Break forth in song, rejoice, and sing praises. Sing to Yahuwah with the lie. Sing to Yahuwah with a harp, with a lie and the voice of a song, with a trumpet and a voice of a shofar. Raise a shout before Yahuwah, the sovereign. Let the sea roar, and let all that fills it, the world and those who dwell in it. Let the rivers clap their hands. Let the mountains sing together for joy before Yahuwah. For he shall come to judge the earth. He judges the world in righteousness and the people in straightness. Thank you, Abba. This is your word, and you shall fulfill it in Yahushua's name. Amen. May we all have a wonderful Shavuot. May Abba bless you all. Shalom, shalom.